The testing hall on Station Omega-7 was bigger than any building they had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Massive windows showed the stars outside, spinning slowly as the station rotated. They stood in line with 200 other cadets, and he was the only human in sight. Well, almost the only human. Somewhere in the observation deck above, Na was watching. She was the other human cadet at the academy, but she studied medicine instead of combat. Day had only spoken to her twice since arriving at the academy 3 months ago. Both times, she had asked him strange questions about Earth's history and why humans fought so much with each other. They focused on the present moment. The line moved forward slowly. One by one, cadets approached the equipment station where instructors handed out gear for the survival examination. This test happened once every year, and it was the hardest challenge in the entire academy. Fail this test, and you went home in shame. Pass it, and you proved you deserved to wear the uniform of the Galactic military. The cadet in front of Day was a Vrelian named Kos. He stood 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like gray stone. When Kos reached the equipment station, the instructor handed him an energy shield generator. The device was small but powerful. Day had seen them in training. They could stop plasma fire for several minutes before the battery died. Kos moved aside, and Day stepped forward. The instructor was a Vrelian named Thomas's. He was even bigger than Kos, with scars across his face and arms. Thomas's had fought in 12 wars across the galaxy. Everyone at the academy knew his name and feared his reputation. He looked at Day for a long moment, his 4 eyes blinking one after another. "Human?" Thomas's said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Your species is new to the academy." "Yes, sir," Day replied. He kept his voice steady and his back straight. "Your people have no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no superior senses." Thomas's picked up a datapad and scrolled through it. "Your planet barely achieved space travel 50 years ago. Tell me, Cadet Day, why should you receive the same equipment as warriors from species with thousands of years of military tradition?" Day had expected this question. Every instructor at the academy had asked him something similar. "I don't need the same equipment, sir. I just need a chance to prove myself." Thomas's made a sound that might have been a laugh. He turned to the other instructors gathered around the equipment station. "The human wants a chance," he announced loudly. Several instructors clicked, buzzed, or hissed in what they recognized as laughter from different species. An insectoid Clith instructor leaned forward. Her name was Rix, and she taught advanced tactics. "Perhaps we give him what his species is known for? Primitive tools?" More laughter from the instructors. Day felt his face grow hot, but he refused to look away or show anger. That was what they wanted. Thomas reached under the equipment table and pulled out a wooden stick. It was about 1 meter long, smooth and dark brown. It looked like something a child might use to play with on Earth. "This is a training staff," Thomas said. "We use it to teach young cadets basic hand-to-hand combat before they earn real weapons. Will this do for you, human?" Day looked at the stick. He thought about the plasma weapons the drones in the test would carry. He thought about the energy shields and advanced gear the other cadets had received. A wooden stick against military technology seemed like a joke, but Day had grown up in the mountains of Korea. His grandfather had taught him about the old warriors who fought with bamboo staffs and wooden swords. "Any tool is only as good as the person using it," his grandfather had said. "A wise warrior can fight with anything." They reached out and took the wooden stick. He felt its weight, tested its balance. The wood was solid and well made. Not perfect, but workable. He looked up at Thomas's. "This will do, sir." The laughter stopped. Thomas's stared at Day with all 4 eyes. For a moment, the massive Relian seemed surprised. Then he nodded slowly. Very well, human. Report to the staging area. Day walked away from the equipment station. Behind him, he heard the instructors talking in low voices. He caught words like arrogant and foolish and won't last an hour. The staging area was a large room with benches along the walls. Cadets gathered in small groups, checking their equipment and talking strategy. They found an empty corner and sat down. He examined his wooden stick more carefully. The wood was some kind of hardwood, probably oak or something similar. No cracks or weak points that he could see. The ends were rounded, not sharp. Someone sat down next to him. They looked up and saw a Cliff cadet. Unlike the instructor Rix, this Cliff was smaller and younger. Her carapace was a bright green color instead of the dark brown of older Cliff. She clicked her mandibles in the pattern that meant friendly greeting. "I am Rix," she said. Her voice came from a translator device on her chest because Cliff vocal cords couldn't make human sounds. Not the instructor Rix. Different name, same sound. "I saw what happened at the equipment station." "Everyone saw," they said quietly. "Yes, the instructors were cruel." Rix looked at his wooden stick. "That is insufficient equipment for this test. The drones have plasma weapons. They have armor. They have sensors that can track you through walls." "I know," they said. "You will die quickly." Rix stated it as a fact, not an insult. That was how Cliff communicated, direct and honest. "I do not understand why you accepted such poor equipment." They thought about how to explain. "On my planet, humans have a saying. It is not the weapon that wins the fight. It is the warrior. These instructors want me to fail. They gave me this stick to prove humans don't belong here. If I complained or refused, they would say humans are weak and afraid. So instead, I take what they give me and prove them wrong." Rix tilted her head, a gesture of confusion in Cliff body language. "But you cannot prove them wrong if you die in the first hour." "Maybe," they admitted. "But maybe I surprise everyone, including myself." Before Rix could respond, a loud tone echoed through the staging area. All conversation stopped. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing Commander Thos's face. "Cadets," Thos's voice boomed. "In 10 minutes, you will enter the simulation zone. Your test is simple. Survive for 48 hours while combat drones hunt you. The drones are programmed to eliminate all cadets. They will not stop. They will not sleep. They will not show mercy. If you are hit by plasma fire, your suit will register the injury and teleport you out of the simulation. You will fail." The display changed to show the test environment, a rocky canyon system with steep cliffs and narrow passages. Very little cover. Nowhere to hide for long. 20 drones will be released into the zone, Thomas's continued. Each drone carries plasma weapons capable of melting through solid steel. Each drone has advanced sensors and tactical programming. In previous years, the average survival time has been 18 hours. Last year, only 3 cadets completed the full 48 hours. Day felt his heart beating faster. His palms were sweaty. He gripped his wooden stick tighter. "This test will show us who deserves to wear the uniform of the Galactic military," Thomas said. "It will separate the warriors from the pretenders. Prepare yourselves. May your skills be sufficient, and may your courage not fail." The holographic display vanished. Cadets stood up, checking their gear one last time. They stood too. He looked at his wooden stick one more time, then walked toward the entrance to the simulation zone. As he passed through the doorway, he heard someone call his name. He turned and saw Na watching from the observation deck. She raised one hand in a gesture of support. They nodded to her, then entered the simulation. The test had begun. The canyon was hot and dry. Day felt sweat on his face immediately. The sun overhead was artificial, created by the station's holograms, but it felt real enough. He looked around at the other cadets spreading out across the canyon floor. Some ran for the cliffs. Others took defensive positions behind rocks. A few stood frozen, paralyzed by fear. Day closed his eyes and took 3 deep breaths. He remembered his grandfather's training. First, observe. Understand your environment. Know where you are before you decide where to go. He opened his eyes and began to move. Not running, just walking steadily. He needed to find a good position to watch from. Somewhere high enough to see, but hidden enough to stay safe. He gripped his wooden stick and moved deeper into the canyon. Somewhere in the distance, they heard the first plasma shot. The test had truly begun. The first hour passed slowly. They found a position halfway up one of the canyon walls, wedged into a narrow crack between 2 large rocks. From here, he could see most of the canyon floor below. He stayed very still and watched everything. The drones appeared 15 minutes after the test started. They came in from all directions, floating on anti-gravity repulsors that made a quiet humming sound. Each drone was about the size of a large dog, with a spherical body made of dark metal. Plasma weapons extended from their front sections, glowing with blue energy. Their sensors swept the canyon in regular patterns, searching for targets. They watched how the drones moved. They didn't fly randomly. They followed patterns, grid searches, moving methodically from one area to another. When a drone detected a cadet, it stopped and aimed. The plasma weapon charged for about 2 seconds before firing. That was important. 2 seconds was enough time to move if you were ready. Below him, a Mersai cadet tried to hide behind a small rock. The drone's sensors detected him easily. The blue glow of the charging plasma lit up the canyon. The Mersai panicked and ran. The plasma bulk hit him in the back. There was a flash of light, and the Mersai disappeared, teleported out of the simulation by his safety suit. Eliminated. Day counted. 17 cadets gone in the first hour. That left about 183 still in the test. The drones were efficient and deadly. He studied the plasma weapons more carefully. After each shot, there was a brief pause. Maybe 3 or 4 seconds. The weapon's barrel glowed hot and needed to cool down. During that time, the drone was vulnerable. Not defenseless. It still had armor and could ram targets, but it couldn't shoot. Another important detail. The drones had excellent sensors for movement and heat, but they seemed less effective at detecting stationary targets that matched the ambient temperature. The cadets who stayed still and calm lasted longer than those who ran around. They memorized all these observations. His grandfather had taught him that knowledge was the first weapon in any fight. Watch your enemy carefully, grandfather had said. Learn their patterns. Find their weaknesses. Then strike where they are vulnerable. After 2 hours, they decided to move. He couldn't stay in one place forever. Eventually, a drone would search this area. He needed to find water and food supplies that the Academy had scattered throughout the simulation zone. More importantly, he needed to test his theories about the drones. He climbed down from his hiding spot, slowly and carefully. He kept his movements smooth and deliberate, nothing sudden that would trigger the drone's motion sensors. At the bottom of the canyon wall, he paused and listened. The humming of nearby drones was faint but present. He moved in the opposite direction. The canyon system was complex, with many branching passages and dead ends. They chose his route carefully, staying in narrow areas where the drones would have difficulty maneuvering. Their spherical bodies and repulsor systems worked well in open spaces, but struggled in tight confines. He found a water supply station in a small cave. 3 other cadets were there, 2 Vrelians and 1 species they didn't recognize, with purple skin and 6 arms. They looked at him and his wooden stick with obvious pity. One of the Vrelians said something in their language that Day's translator didn't catch, but the tone was mocking. Day ignored them. He filled his water container and took some nutrition packs. As he turned to leave, he heard the humming sound. A drone was approaching the cave entrance. The three cadets grabbed their weapons. The Vrelians had energy rifles. The six-armed alien had some kind of blade weapons. They formed a defensive line at the cave entrance. They moved to the side, into the shadows. The drone appeared at the cave entrance. Its sensors swept the interior. The plasma weapon began to glow as it charged. The Vrelians fired their energy rifles first. The bolts hit the drone's armor and scorched it, but didn't penetrate. The drone's armor was tough. The drone fired. The plasma bolt hit one Vrelian in the chest. Flash of light. Eliminated. The other Vrelian and the six-armed alien attacked together. The Vrelian's energy rifle overheated after 3 shots. The six-armed alien's blades bounced off the drone's armor. The drone fired again. Another flash. Both cadets eliminated. Now Day was alone with the drone. The drone turned toward him, sensors locking on. The plasma weapon began to charge again. Blue glow. 2 seconds until it fired. Day had been counting. He didn't run. Instead, he moved sideways quickly, pressing himself against the cave wall. The drone tracked his movement but had to rotate to aim properly. The cave was narrow. The drone's spherical body bumped against the cave wall as it turned. That slowed it down slightly. The plasma weapon fired. Day had already moved again. The bolt hit the cave wall behind where he had been standing. The rock exploded from the heat, sending fragments everywhere. Now the drone's weapon was in its cooling period. 4 seconds. Day counted automatically while he moved. He ran forward, directly at the drone. This was the opposite of what the drone expected. Its tactical programming assumed targets would run away from it, not toward it. The drone tried to back up, but its repulsors pushed it against the cave wall. It was stuck for a moment. That was all the time Day needed. He swung his wooden stick hard against the drone's front sensor array. The wood cracked against the metal, but didn't break. The drone's sensors sparked and flickered. Day swung again, same spot. More sparks. The drone's weapon finished cooling and began to charge again. Blue glow. Day had 2 seconds. He jammed his wooden stick into the gap between the drone's weapon barrel and its main body. The stick wedged in tight. When the plasma weapon tried to rotate to aim at Day, the wood blocked it. The weapon fired anyway, but it was pointed at the wrong angle, aimed at the cave ceiling. Rock exploded overhead. Chunks fell on the drone, battering it. One large piece hit the drone's damaged sensor array. The sensors went dark completely. The drone was blind. Day pulled his stick free. The end was scorched and blackened from the plasma heat, but still solid. He examined the drone carefully. Without sensors, it was operating on basic programming now. It spun in circles, trying to detect anything with its backup systems. They noticed something important. The armor plating on the drone had seam-small gaps where the plates connected. The gaps were tiny, maybe a few millimeters wide, but they were there. They had to be there so the drone could move and rotate its weapon. He circled around behind the blind drone. He found the seam he was looking for, right where the drone's repulsor unit connected to its main body. The gap was protected by the thick armor plates on either side. But from this exact angle, Day could see through to the interior. He raised his wooden stick high. Then he brought it down hard, like a spear, directly into the seam. The wood was harder than the drone's internal circuits. Something inside crunched and sparked. The drone's humming stopped. Its repulsors failed. It dropped to the cave floor with a heavy thud. Day stood over the disabled drone, breathing hard. His hand shook slightly from adrenaline. He had just destroyed a military combat drone with a wooden stick. He examined his stick. One end was burned and damaged from the plasma heat. The other end was starting to splinter from the impacts, but it still held together. Good enough. They left the cave quickly. Where there was one drone, others would come soon. He moved deeper into the canyon system, thinking about what he had learned. The drones had three main weaknesses. Their sensors could be damaged. Their weapons had a cooling period, and their armor had seams. One drone down. 19 to go. Over the next several hours, Day developed his tactics. He learned to use the environment. Narrow passages limited the drone's movement. Steep cliffs created blind spots in their sensors. Loose rocks could be dislodged to fall on drones from above. He encountered two more drones and destroyed, both using variations of his cave tactic. The second drone he attacked from above, dropping onto it from a cliff ledge and jamming his stick into its sensor array before it could react. The third drone he lured into a narrow passage and wedged it between two rocks. Then pried open its armor seam while it was stuck taut by the end of the first. 12 hours into the test, Day had eliminated 4 drones. More importantly, he had survived longer than 80% of the other cadets. Only about 30 cadets remained active in the simulation. They found a small cave to rest in. He was exhausted. His body hurt from climbing, running, and fighting. Burns on his arms from near misses with plasma fire stung and ached. His wooden stick was in bad shape now. The burned end was almost useless, and cracks ran along its length. But he couldn't give up. Not yet. He drank water and ate a nutrition pack. The food tasted like cardboard, but it gave him energy. He closed his eyes for a moment, just to rest them. That was when he heard the clicking sound. Day opened his eyes. In the cave entrance stood the cliff cadet he had talked to before the test, Rix. Her bright green carapace was scorched in several places. One of her legs dragged slightly. She was injured. "Human," she said through her translator. "I require assistance." Day stood up slowly. This was a decision point. Academy doctrine was clear. In survival exercises, you were supposed to focus on your own survival. Helping injured cadets slowed you down and put you at risk. The instructors would expect him to leave Rix behind. But Day thought about his grandfather again. A true warrior protects. Rix collapsed just inside the cave entrance. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, a bad sign for cliff physiology. Day examined her injuries carefully. The plasma burn on her side looked serious. Her camouflage generator, the device that had been her test equipment, was melted and useless, hanging from her carapace by a single broken strap. What happened? Day asked as he opened his medical kit. Every cadet carried basic medical supplies, even him. 3 drones cornered me in a ravine, Rix explained. Her translator made her voice sound flat and emotionless, but Day could see pain in the way her mandibles trembled. My camouflage worked for a time. Then, one drone adjusted its sensor frequency. It detected my heat signature through the camouflage. I ran. They fired. My generator exploded. I barely escaped. They applied burn gel to her wound. Rix flinched but didn't cry out. Cliff were tough. "You need to stay still and let this heal," they said. "The gel will repair the damaged tissue, but it takes time." "I will be eliminated," Rix said matter-of-factly. "I cannot move quickly enough to avoid the drones. My camouflage is destroyed. I have no weapon." "It is over." "Not yet," Day replied. He looked around the cave, thinking. This cave is defensible. The entrance is narrow. Drones will have trouble getting inside. You rest here. I'll make sure they don't find you. Rix tilted her head in confusion. You would protect me? That is against optimal survival strategy. You should leave me and increase your own chances. Probably, Day admitted. But where I come from, we have a saying. No one fights alone. If we only think about ourselves, we're no better than the drones. He spent the next hour setting up defenses around the cave. He used rocks to create a barrier at the entrance. Not solid, but enough to slow down any drone that tried to enter. He scattered loose stones on the approaches so he would hear anything coming. Then he marked the surrounding area, memorizing the terrain so he could fight here if needed. In the observation deck, high above the simulation, the instructors watched Day's actions on holographic displays. Commander Thomas stood with his forearms crossed, studying the human cadet with growing interest. "He's protecting the cliff," one instructor said with surprise. "Why? She cannot help him win." "Maybe he is simply foolish," another instructor suggested. But Dr. Hai, the human xenobiologist, shook her head. She was older than Day, with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been one of the first humans to leave Earth and join the galactic community. "Not foolish," she said quietly. "This is human pack behavior. They evolved as social hunters. They protected their tribe members, even when it cost them personally. It's in their nature." Thomas grunted. "Nature is irrelevant. This is a military test. Sentiment will get him killed." "Perhaps," Dr. Hai said. "Or perhaps it will show us something we've forgotten." In the simulation, they left Rix resting and went hunting. 16 drones remained active. He couldn't wait for them to find the cave. He needed to draw them away, keep them focused on other areas. He moved through the canyon with more confidence now. He understood the drones' patterns. They searched in grids, moving from area to area. When they detected a target, they communicated with nearby drones using radio signals. They had learned to recognize the change in their humming sound when they sent these signals. He found a drone, searching near a water station. This time, he tried a different approach. Instead of attacking directly, he threw rocks to create noise in multiple directions. The drone's sensors picked up the sounds and tried to track all of them at once. Its programming couldn't decide which target to pursue. It hesitated, rotating back and forth. In that moment of confusion, Day struck. He ran in from the drone's blind spot, directly behind it, where its weapon couldn't rotate fast enough to target him. He swung his wooden stick at the repulsor unit. The impact didn't destroy it, but it knocked the drone off balance. It tilted sideways, struggling to correct its flight. Day swung again, this time at the communications antenna on top of the drone. The antenna snapped off. Now the drone couldn't call for help. It was isolated. The drone tried to fire at him, but Day had already moved. He led it into a narrow passage between two rock walls. The drone followed, its tactical programming telling it to pursue. But in the narrow space, its spherical body scraped against both walls. It had to slow down to avoid damaging itself. They waited at the far end of the passage. When the drone emerged, he was ready. He had wedged his wooden stick between two rocks, creating a primitive spear trap. The drone flew directly into it. The stick punched through the armor seam and into the drone's power core. Sparks flew. The drone died. 5 drones eliminated now. Day retrieved his stick. It was in terrible condition. Both ends were damaged. The middle section had deep cracks, and it was at least 10 centimeters shorter than when he started. He estimated it would last maybe 2 more fights before breaking completely. He needed to make every strike count. Hours passed. Day turned to night in the simulation. The artificial sun disappeared, replaced by artificial stars. The canyon became dark and cold. Most of the remaining cadets had found places to hide and wait out the night. But the drones didn't need light. Their sensors worked just as well in darkness. They used the darkness to his advantage. He moved quietly through the shadows, stalking drones instead of running from them. His human eyes adjusted to low light better than the drone's visual sensors expected. They were designed to fight species with either very good night vision or very poor night vision. Humans fell somewhere in the middle, which confused their programming. He found 2 drones searching near the cave where Rix was hiding. His heart rate increased. He needed to lead them away before they discovered her. They picked up a rock and threw it far to the left. The sound echoed off the canyon walls. Both drones turned toward the noise. They threw another rock to the right. The drones split up, each going after one sound. Classic misdirection. He followed the nearest drone quietly. When it stopped to scan for the source of the noise, they attacked from behind. His wooden stick hit the sensor array hard. The sensors cracked. Before the drone could rotate its weapon, they hit it again. Then again. The 4th strike finally penetrated the armor seam. The drone dropped. The 2nd drone heard the commotion and returned. They ran, leading it away from the cave. He climbed up a steep cliff face, using handholds that the drone couldn't follow with its repulsors. The drone tried to fly up after him, but they had planned for this. At the top of the cliff, he had positioned several large rocks. As the drone rose into view, they pushed the rocks over the edge. They fell directly onto the drone, smashing its armor and driving it into the ground. When Day climbed down to check, the drone was completely destroyed. 7 drones eliminated. Day returned to the cave as the artificial sun began to rise again. 24 hours had passed. He was exhausted, covered in dust and minor burns. His water was almost gone. His wooden stick was barely holding together, more of a short club now than a staff. Rix was awake when he entered the cave. The burn gel had done its work. Her wound looked much better. She could stand without pain. "You survived the night," Rix said. "And you eliminated 2 more drones. I heard the explosions." 7 total, Day said. He sat down heavily and drank the last of his water. 13 left. "How are you feeling?" "Better." "Strong enough to continue." Rix clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "I have been thinking, human. You fight in a way I do not understand. Drones are superior to you in every way. Stronger, faster, better armed, better armored. Yet you defeat them. How?" They thought about the question. How could he explain human thinking to an alien species? "On Earth, my ancestors hunted animals much bigger and stronger than us. Mammoths, giant bears, predators with claws and teeth. We couldn't beat them with strength, so we used strategy. We learned their habits. We used tools. We worked together. We exhausted them over time. Humans are persistence hunters. We don't have to be the strongest or fastest. We just have to be smarter and refuse to give up." "Persistence hunting," Rix repeated. "This is not taught at the academy. The instructors teach us to rely on superior technology and firepower." "Technology is good," they said. "But technology can fail. My grandfather taught me that the weapon doesn't matter as much as the warrior's mind. These drones are powerful, but they're predictable. They follow programming. I just have to think differently than their programming expects." Rix was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I understand now why the instructors gave you only a wooden stick. They wanted to prove you were inferior. But instead, you are teaching them a lesson about assumptions." They smiled tiredly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just get lucky a lot." "Luck is not random," Rix said. "Luck is preparation meeting opportunity. You create your own luck." They rested for another hour. Then they heard the humming sound in the distance. Multiple drones, moving in their search pattern. They were getting closer to this area. Day and Rix needed to move. "Can you travel?" They asked. "Yes. Slowly, but yes." "Good. We need to find a better position. Somewhere with water and supplies." They looked at his damaged wooden stick. "And I need to find a way to make a new weapon. This one won't last much longer." They left the cave together. They led, moving carefully and quietly. Rix followed, her injured leg no longer dragging. Around them, the canyon stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, 13 drones continued. 36 hours into the test, only 4 cadets remained active. Day and Rix had survived through careful movement and strategic thinking. The other 2 survivors were Kos, a Vrelian with an energy rifle, and Vel, a Mersai with some kind of energy blade weapon. They had found each other 6 hours ago and formed an alliance. 11 drones remained operational, and they were changing their tactics. They noticed it first. The drones were no longer searching in their regular grid patterns. They were converging, moving as a coordinated group toward the central plateau of the canyon system. This was new behavior. The drones' programming had adapted. "They're learning," they said quietly to Rix. They were hidden behind a large boulder, watching the drone movements from a distance. "That should not be possible," Rix replied. "Combat drones have fixed tactical algorithms. They cannot learn during a simulation. Maybe someone is controlling them directly now," they suggested. "Or maybe their programming includes adaptation protocols we didn't know about." Whatever the reason, the change in drone behavior was dangerous. As a coordinated group, the drones were much more effective. They could cover each other, create crossfire patterns, and prevent the kind of isolated attacks they had been using. They and Rix found Kos and Vel near a water station. The 2 cadets looked as exhausted as they felt. Kos's energy rifle power cell was nearly depleted, only about 10% charge remaining. Vel's blade weapon had several cracks in its energy matrix. "Human," Kos said when he saw Day. The Vrelian's voice was tired but respectful. "You are still alive. That is impressive. We need to work together," they said immediately. "The drones are grouping up. They're heading to the central plateau. If we're separated, they'll eliminate us one by one." Vel, the Mersai, made a bubbling sound and his translator rendered as a laugh. "Work together? With what? Your stick is nearly destroyed. My blade is failing. Kos has barely any power left. What can we do against 11 drones?" Day looked at the 3 cadets. Then he looked at the distant plateau visible through the canyon. An idea was forming in his mind. It was risky, maybe insane, but it might be their only chance. "We force them to fight us on our terms," they said. "We go to the plateau first. We set up a defensive position. Then we make them attack us all at once." Kos's 4 eyes widened. "That is suicide? The plateau has no cover. We would be completely exposed." "Exactly," they said. "But think about it. The drones work well as a team, but they're still machines. They follow patterns. If all 11 attack at the same time, they'll all fire at the same time. And after they fire, they all have to cool down at the same time. That gives us a window of maybe 3 or 4 seconds when they can't shoot." 3 seconds against 11 drones, Vel said. "That is not enough time." "It is if we're prepared," they insisted. "We lure them into position. We force them to waste their first shots. Then we attack during the cooldown. It only works if we're all committed. If even one person hesitates, we all fail." Rix clicked her mandibles. "This plan relies on the drones behaving predictably. If they fire in sequence instead of simultaneously, your strategy fails." "That's the risk," they admitted. "But I've watched these drones for 36 hours. When they attack as a group, they synchronize. Their programming optimizes for concentrated firepower. They'll all fire together because that's what their tactical algorithms tell them to do." Kos was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened his massive frame. "I am nearly out of power anyway. I would rather die fighting than hiding. I will join your plan, human." Vel hesitated longer. Finally, he nodded. "If the Vrelian warrior is willing, then I am shamed to refuse. We fight together. Good, Day said. He began explaining his plan in detail. 20 minutes later, they were in position on the central plateau. It was a flat area about 50 meters across, elevated above the canyon floor. Just as Koss had said, there was no cover here. Nothing to hide behind. They would be completely visible to the drones. Day had spent the 20 minutes preparing. He had used his nearly broken wooden stick to create a small hole in the plateau's surface, right in the center. The hole was just deep enough for one person to lie down in and be below the line of fire. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. Koss and Vel positioned themselves on opposite sides of the plateau. When the drones came, they would create crossfire themselves, forcing the drones to split their attention. Rix was hidden at the edge of the plateau, ready to provide distraction at a critical moment. Day stood in the center of the plateau, completely exposed. In his hands, he held the remains of his wooden stick. It was now only about 40 centimeters long, cracked and burned. But it was still solid wood. Still useful. The humming sound grew louder. The drones were coming in the observation deck. Every instructor was watching. The simulation had attracted attention throughout the academy. Word had spread about the human cadet with only a wooden stick who had survived this long and eliminated 7 drones. Now everyone wanted to see how it would end. Commander Thomas leaned forward, all 4 eyes focused on the display. Foolish, he muttered. The human chooses the worst possible position. He makes himself a target. Dr. Hai said nothing. She watched Day carefully, seeing something in his posture and positioning that the military instructors missed. The 11 drones rose over the edge of the plateau simultaneously. Their sensors locked onto Day immediately. He was standing in the open, making no effort to hide. The perfect target. The drones formed a semicircle around him, maintaining optimal firing distance. Their tactical programming calculated firing solutions. 11 drones against 1 target. A certain kill. Day's heart pounded. His mouth was dry. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But he had committed to this plan. Running now would doom them all. The plasma weapons began to charge. Blue glow from 11 barrels, all pointed at him. 2 seconds. Day counted in his head. 1, 2. At the last possible instant, Day threw himself backward into the small depression he had dug. It wasn't deep enough to fully protect him, but it was enough to get his vital organs below the line of fire. 11 plasma bolts fired simultaneously. The air above the plateau exploded with light and heat. The bolts converged on where Day had been standing a split second ago. They missed by centimeters, close enough that Day felt the heat sear his clothes and skin, but he wasn't hit. He wasn't eliminated. Now the drones were in their cooldown period. 3.5 seconds before they could fire again. Now. Day shouted. Koss fired his energy rifle from the left. 3 shots with his remaining power. They hit 2 drones, damaging sensors and armor. Vel rushed in from the right, his energy blade slashing at the nearest drone. The blade cut through the weakened armor plating, disabling the drone's repulsors. Rix emerged from her hiding spot and threw rocks with surprising accuracy, hitting sensor arrays and creating confusion. And Day erupted from his depression, running at full speed. He had plotted his course carefully. The nearest drone was still processing what had happened. Day jumped, using the drone's own body as a stepping stone, and launched himself at the next drone. His wooden stick jabbed into the communications antenna. The drone lost coordination with the others. 2 seconds left in the cooldown period. Day landed hard and rolled. He came up next to another drone and swung his stick at its repulsor unit. The wood finally broke, snapping in half. But the impact was enough. The repulsor failed. The drone crashed to the ground. 1 second left. They grabbed 1/2 of his broken stick and jammed it into the fallen drone's armor seam. Then he picked up the drone's body and heaved it with all his strength at two more drones that were grouped together. The mass of tangled metal machines crashed into each other. The cooldown period ended. 8 drones remained functional, but they were disorganized. Their perfect formation was broken. Some had damaged sensors. Others were out of position. Their tactical algorithms struggled to recalculate, but they were still dangerous. They began to fire again, this time in sequence rather than simultaneously. Plasma bolts lit up the plateau. Koss's energy rifle depleted completely. Vel's energy blade flickered and died. Rick's ran for cover. They had no weapon now. Both halves of his wooden stick were gone, embedded in disabled drones. He had nothing but his hands and his mind. A plasma bolt hit near his feet. He jumped back. Another bolt grazed his shoulder. Pain exploded through his arm. The simulation suit registered the hit but didn't teleport him out. It was only a grazing wound, not a direct hit. They saw a disabled drone nearby, one that Koss had damaged earlier. Its plasma weapon was intact, but its power systems were failing. They ran to it and began pulling at the weapon mount. It was designed to resist removal, but they used leverage and determination. The weapon tore free. He lifted the heavy plasma weapon. It was massive, designed for a robotic mount, not human hands. But Day braced it against his good shoulder and aimed at the nearest active drone. The weapon was still powered by the drone's residual energy. Enough for maybe one shot. Day's finger found the trigger mechanism. He squeezed. The plasma weapon fired. The recoil nearly knocked Day off his feet. But the bolt hit true, striking a drone directly in its power core. The drone exploded, sending shrapnel into 2 others nearby. 5 drones left, but Day's borrowed weapon was now dead, empty. He dropped it and ran. A plasma bolt chased him. Another. The teleportation field activated, and Day found himself back in the staging area. Medical personnel rushed forward immediately, checking his injuries. The burn on his shoulder was superficial but painful. He had cuts and bruises covering most of his body. His hands were blistered from gripping the wooden stick for 48 hours. But he was alive, and he had passed. Rix appeared next to him, also being examined by medical staff. Then Koss materialized, looking exhausted but proud. Vel came last, his aquatic features showing stress but also relief. All 4 of them had survived the full 48 hours. Out of 200 cadets who started, only 4 finished. "We did it," Vel said, his translator making his bubbling speech understandable. "I cannot believe we actually did it." Koss laughed, a deep rumbling sound. The humans' crazy plan worked. Against all logic, it worked. Medical personnel escorted them to the recovery area. Day's shoulder was treated with advanced healing gel that made the pain fade within minutes. His other wounds were cleaned and bandaged. He was given water and real food, not the tasteless nutrition packs from the simulation. Everything felt surreal after 48 hours of constant danger. Na appeared in the recovery area. She had been watching from the observation deck the entire time. Her face showed concern when she saw Day's condition. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel terrible," Day admitted. "But I passed." "You did more than pass," Na said quietly. "Everyone is talking about you. The instructors, the other cadets, everyone. They're calling it the greatest performance in Academy history. 7 drones eliminated with only a wooden stick. 8, they corrected. I disabled 1 more during the final fight." Na smiled. 8 then. Still impressive. Day, you proved something important today. You showed that humans belong here. Before Day could respond, an announcement echoed through the recovery area. All cadets and staff were summoned to the Grand Hall for the examination review. This was standard procedure after the survival test. The instructors would analyze the performance of all participants and announce the official results. They, Rix, Koss, and Vel were given fresh uniforms and escorted to the Grand Hall. The massive room was filled with cadets and instructors. Everyone stood when the 4 survivors entered. There was applause, a show of respect for completing the test. Commander Thomas stood at the front of the hall on an elevated platform. In his hands he held something small. As they got closer, he saw what it was. The remains of his wooden stick. Just a small fragment now, maybe 15 centimeters long, burned and cracked and worn. The hall fell silent. Thos's 4 eyes swept across the assembled crowd, then settled on Day. Cadet Day. Thos's voice boomed through the hall. Step forward. Day walked to the front. His legs felt weak, but he kept his posture straight and his expression calm. Thomas held up the wooden stick fragment for everyone to see. When I gave you this training staff 48 hours ago, it was not a gift. It was a test. A test of your character. A test of your judgment. I believed you would complain or refuse or demand better equipment. I believed you would prove that humans are not ready for the galactic military. The hall was completely silent. Everyone waited for Thos's next words. I was wrong, Thomas said. The admission clearly cost him something. In the 400 years of this academy's existence, we have never seen a performance like yours. 8 combat drones eliminated. 48 hours survived. Multiple cadets protected and assisted. All with only a wooden stick. Thomas paused, looking at the stick fragment. But this is not truly a story about a stick. This is a story about what we have forgotten. We have advanced technology. We have energy weapons that can destroy starships. We have armor that can withstand nuclear explosions. We have sensors that can track targets across light years of space. And we believe these tools made us superior warriors. He turned to address the entire hall now. This human showed us the truth. Technology is only as effective as the warrior who uses it. The galactic military has spent thousands of years perfecting our equipment, but we have neglected to perfect ourselves. We rely on our tools so completely that we forget the principles of warfare itself: observation, adaptation, persistence, and resourcefulness. Thomas looked back at Day. You defeated combat drones not because you were stronger, or faster, or better armed. You defeated them because you understood something fundamental about combat that we had forgotten. You understood that victory comes from the mind, not the weapon. You proved that the most dangerous thing in any battle is not the biggest gun. It is the warrior who refuses to give up, who learns from every mistake, who turns every disadvantage into an opportunity. Thomas handed the wooden stick fragment to Day. This belongs to you. Keep it. Remember what you accomplished with it. And remember that the greatest weapon any warrior possesses is not made of metal or energy. It is made of determination and intelligence. The hall erupted in applause. Day stood holding the small piece of wood, feeling its weight. It was nothing special, just wood. But it represented everything he had survived, everything he had learned, everything his grandfather had taught him. The ceremony continued. Thomas announced changes to the Academy's training protocols. From now on, all cadets would undergo exercises that limited their access to advanced technology. They would learn to fight with simple tools. They would develop the same adaptive thinking that Day had demonstrated. The Academy would still teach advanced warfare, but it would also teach the ancient principles that technology had made them forget. After the ceremony, Day found himself surrounded by other cadets wanting to talk to him, to understand how he did it, to learn from him. Even cadets from species that had looked down on humans before now treated him with respect. Rix approached him when the crowd finally thinned. Human Day, she corrected herself. I wanted to thank you. When I was injured, you protected me. You risked your own survival for mine. This is not standard warrior behavior in my culture, but I now understand it is standard for yours. We look after each other, they said simply. That's what makes us strong. Yes, Rix agreed. I see that now. I will remember this lesson. Kos came next, all four of his massive arms extended in the brilliant gesture of respect. I doubted you, human. I thought your species was weak. I was foolish. You have the heart of a true warrior. I would be honored to fight alongside you again. Val simply nodded today, but there was respect in the gesture. Words weren't necessary. Later that evening, Day sat alone in his quarters. The wooden stick fragment lay on his desk. He picked it up and turned it over in his hands, examining it closely. The wood was scarred and burned. You could see the history written on it, every impact, every near miss with plasma fire, every desperate moment. Na knocked on his door and entered. She sat down across from him. How do you feel? She asked. They thought about the question. Tired, sore, but also proud, I guess. Not just of passing the test. Proud that I represented humanity well. You did, Na said. You showed them that we're not weak. That we're different, but different can be just as good. Maybe better in some ways. My grandfather used to tell me stories, they said. Stories about ancient Korean warriors who fought with bamboo staffs and wooden swords against enemies with metal weapons and armor. He said those warriors won not because of their weapons, but because of their spirit, their refusal to give up, their ability to see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Your grandfather sounds wise, Na said. He was. They set down the stick fragment. The funny thing is, I think Commander Thomas's learned more from this test than I did. He designed it to prove I would fail. Instead, I showed him that his assumptions were wrong. That's the real victory, not defeating the drones, but changing how people think about humans. Na smiled. The galaxy is going to have to adjust to us. We're not like other species. We don't fit their expectations. But maybe that's exactly what they need. Someone to challenge their assumptions. Someone to remind them that technology isn't everything. They talked for a while longer, then Na left to let Day rest. He lay down on his bed, feeling every ache and pain in his body. But despite the discomfort, he felt good. He had survived. He had proven himself. He had honored his grandfather's teachings. Before sleep took him, Day thought about the wooden stick one more time. Thomas's had said it was just a training tool, something to humiliate him. But Day saw it differently. The stick was perfect. It was simple enough to understand completely, strong enough to be useful, versatile enough to adapt to any situation, and humble enough that enemies underestimated it until too late. The stick was like humanity itself. Nothing special on the surface. No natural advantages. No overwhelming power. But with determination, intelligence, and the refusal to give up, it could achieve the impossible. Day closed his eyes and drifted into sleep. In his dreams, he was back in the mountains of Korea with his grandfather, learning to fight with wooden staffs. His grandfather smiled at him and said, "Remember, Day the warrior makes the weapon, not the other way around. Never forget that." They never would.